Helping Seniors Television, all about improving quality of life for seniors. If you're a senior, know a senior, or plan to be a senior, then this show is for you. It's all about helping you develop your own aging plan so you can age actively and with dignity. Helping Seniors Television from the Helping Seniors Network of information, education, and resources.
Welcome to this edition of Helping Seniors Television. I'm Kerry Fink, and welcome to today's program. On behalf of Joe Steckler, our president and founder, and our entire team at Helping Seniors, we're so glad you're here. Our mission is to inform, educate, and connect you to resources that are going to make a difference as you create your own aging plan. So in our case, what that means is we want to help you develop the tools and resources that are going to help you in all the situations and circumstances you'll find as we advance in years. So a lot of times we in Florida understand it because we talk about a thing called a hurricane plan. Doesn't mean we want to have a storm. It just means we want to have a plan of how we're going to address whatever comes up through that storm. So with that, we always love to get into different topics that are going to be beneficial. There's a lot of things that we need to know along the way to create an aging plan. And there's a couple of things that we've learned along the way that we talk about things. One of those rules that we speak about is we say, don't try this on your own. There's a great tendency, particularly with the ease of access to the internet and things like that. We'll often run up on something and say, you know what, I'm just going to research this. I'm going to ask a question on the internet and see if I can get an answer. And the challenge with that is, as we talk about so many times, you're going to get maybe an international answer. You're going to get answers that may not be state specific. You may be getting old search materials coming back and things. You really have to talk to somebody local to get the answers that you need for your situation. So for example, Helping Seniors Brevard, we are 100% local to Brevard County. And one of the things we talk to people a lot of times about is when you're dealing with people that are going to help you in your aging plan, you really need to find somebody local that you can trust, somebody that goes across the thresholds of the businesses, the houses, the real estate, the different things that you'd be considering, who's familiar with it, and who also understands the market. So a lot of times we'll get calls from somebody who's called an 800 number. Maybe they found an offer from somebody they used to admire on television who says, call this 1-800 number about your real estate or about your the reverse mortgage, or maybe it's about your Medicare insurance. The challenge with that is you're not talking to somebody, even if they're well-intentioned, you're talking to somebody who's out of state, who doesn't really know the things that are going on right here in Brevard County. So they may come up with advice that may not be appropriate. They may think Titusville is a whole lot closer to Cocoa Beach than it actually is. Or they might think, well, Palm Bay is not a far shot from Satellite Beach. But when you're local, you understand the traffic patterns and what you get into. And that's why I'm so excited to introduce our guest today, Mark Gallegos with Real Broker LLC, who's an expert real estate expert. And I'm talking about whether you're buying real estate, selling real estate, or even if your goal is to invest in real estate. We're going to cover a lot of area that's very appropriate and very local to Brevard County. Welcome, Mark.
Kerry, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
You know, we've had the pleasure of doing some radio shows along the way, and I was really impressed with your knowledge of the real estate market. We were talking about your background, where not only are you familiar for years with the Florida real estate market and Brevard, you have extensive experience in South Florida, but also that you've been in international dealings as well, working in Central America and places all over the world. So your breadth and experience of the real estate market really is quite deep, Mark. Introduce a little bit for the folks that don't know all about you already.
Well, Mark Gallegos, and living and working professionally here in South Florida. My wife and I, Jeannie, moved here to Brevard County about 5 years ago. We're both realtors. So we're on the ground. We're studying the real estate. We're studying the market every day. The first thing we do when we get up in the morning is we look at the market numbers. And when it comes to real estate and your real estate decisions, it becomes local, local, local. You're going to be seeing so many news articles and reports on television and social media and the things that pop up on your screen, on your phone, that are going to give you numbers of interest rates or supply and demand. then when it comes down to your decision for making your purchase, for selling your home, or making the investment. And many people are making the investment in the state of Florida. The state of Florida is a mecca at this point because there's a net increase of over 1,200 people per day to the state of Florida, and you can confirm that with the U.S. Census Bureau.
Yeah, it's incredible when you think about what's happened. We always talk about this from the world of helping seniors. The need for helping seniors as a 501c3 nonprofit here in Brevard County is so important because of the fact that not only are we seeing so many people move into their retirement years, the boomers are all arriving there, but number two, people just because of good medical services and things like that, and maybe some better awareness of things that keep us healthier, we're just living longer. I mean, it used to be unusual somebody would be 95 or 105. It's becoming much, much more common. So we have seniors living longer. But then, as you pointed out, so many people are moving into Florida that this is really kind of like a place that everybody's wanting to come to. And that brings me back to the point that I kind of opened the show with, Mark, is people sometimes will think like, oh, I can just get out on the internet and research what my property is worth, or I want to buy a property, but they don't really have their ear to the ground and they're trusting some algorithm that is made up to say, well, my house is worth this. When we were doing radio, there was a gentleman after the show who came in and asked, well, I'm seeing this online value. Is that what I should really be looking at? And you were real careful to explain to him, like, no, you can't really take that. There's too many other variables you have to consider. Talk about that for a minute.
And you get these gross algorithms that are based on numbers and statistics nationally, or for the state of Florida, or even for Brevard County, or one of the counties in the state of Florida. And those numbers don't necessarily apply to your situation. Every case is unique.
Yeah.
And as we are aging and our age is being followed by these years, we are making real estate and investment decisions. For most Americans and most international people coming to the United States, this is the largest transaction they'll ever be involved in. And what is unique about the real estate business and law nationally and in the state of Florida is that there are standardized contracts.
Yeah.
Contracts approved by the Florida bar, reviewed by attorneys, okayed by the courts, and followed by all of the real estate agents. You're using a real estate agent because of the hours of research that is required to go into a transaction and get to sign a contract, and then from the signing of the contract to get to a closing, because there are so many contingencies built into the contract that if you're not aware of the contract and the terms in the contract, your real estate agent is going to be able to guide you through this standard contract that every buyer, seller, investor is going to be using for the particular transaction. And the transactions are larger or smaller, and you're going to be influenced by all of these macro numbers, the interest rates, the supply and demand, the length of time that it takes to close, the amount of properties that are the inventory on the market at any point in time, and the length of time that the inventory stays at certain levels. These are macro numbers that are some generalized guidance. Knowing what you are doing in your particular case in order to get to your particular sale, purchase, or investment goal means you've got to spend some time with your realtor and let the realtor do the work.
You know, that is so important what you were just saying. Here's an example of why we talk about, like, let's don't try this on your own. I was having this conversation with one of the excellent elder law attorneys that we do a lot of work with. And she said to me, Kerry, she said, you know, a lot of times when people come to me, this is like the first time in their life that they've been confronted with a situation, maybe the second, but it's like a handful of times. She's like, Kerry, we do this 20 or 30 times a week, and we've been doing this for 20 years. So there's not much somebody can bring us that we haven't had to navigate before. That's the value of experience. And this is the point that I wanted to bring back to the conversation we're having is like if you try to go out on the internet and try to figure this stuff out, you guys wake up, you eat, sleep, breathe, you know every nuance of what the market's going up, if the market's going down, is this the time I should buy? Is this the time I should sell? You're in a unique position because of your expertise to help us navigate those things so that we can maximize, either our timing or our finances, or to make sure that we're making the best deal for our particular situation.
And using your realtor, just as that particular attorney mentioned, is you're gaining that experience, that insight, because there are so many nuance, so many details that go into the contract that you're going to be examining in any property. A residential property, you're going to be looking at the kitchens and the bathrooms and the roof and the plumbing and the electrical system and the age of those things. And then the local regulations and restrictions on building and whether builders have followed those restrictions and whether those restrictions still apply or can be used to negotiate price. And negotiating price is what it ultimately comes down to as people walk into these situations. What the realtor brings is a wealth of knowledge and experience. As I'm describing to you, I've done billion-dollar deals, $100,000 deals, $50,000 deals. But the details are important in every single deal for every single person that you're working with.
I think that's another point that you're hitting on, Mark, is that you don't want, there are so many people who like tack a card up on a local grocery store and say, I'm a realtor, or, they're a part-time realtor. And I'm not casting aspersions. I'm just saying that there's a difference between maybe doing this as a sideline and somebody who really understands the business, who's involved in it daily like you are.
It is important to get a sense of how involved your agent is in studying the market and bringing information to you as the purchaser, the seller, the investor. The state of Florida has more real estate agents than any other state in the United States. And as you mentioned, people are going and getting their real estate license, and then they're putting it on the shelf because they think it's not that big a deal. But when it comes to your investment, when it comes to your money, when it comes to the transfer of your property to your generations, we are at this senior level where we're looking at what comes next.
Yeah.
And these are transactions that are going to take our families into what comes next. And these are our largest assets, one of the largest, if not the largest asset that you'll own in your entire life. And you're looking to be able to pass this on to another generation, making your kids' life or even your grandchildren's lives just a little bit easier because they have this solid asset in the ground that can't be taken away.
We have talked about this a little bit in the past where we mentioned that, Florida in particular has some very good protections for homestead properties. So even compared to what happens in some of the other states, I've gotten some insight from some of the attorneys who help people with probates and things like that. But Florida has very strong protections for the homeowner who's primary, the homestead, their primary home. And so it makes sense, even in your senior years, maybe to take a look at making sure that you're protecting that homestead, because that, number one, enables you to have a secure place to live, but also creates something for the next in line, as you said, because Medicare isn't going to come back and get your home or things like that could happen in other states. So there's a real reason, maybe if you were renting something or you sold your property up north, there was a real reason to take a look at purchasing your residence here in Florida too, I would think.
Florida is unique and it attracts many people and investors for that reason. And the homestead exemption is a tremendous tool that you as the purchaser, you as the seller, you as the investor need to look at and put into your business plan. as I was describing, I draft these business plans very often for the developers. I've been a developer myself, and I present my own business plans to financing organizations and to investors who are going to work with me into multifamily units and apartment buildings and condominiums. And there's so many other structures. You're seeing now the tiny home trend that is ongoing. And as seniors, very often with more limited income and fewer activities than before, we don't need all of that space.
Right.
I don't need 5 acres for my horses to run around in the backyard. I need to be able to take care of getting breakfast in the morning and getting out the door or getting to my office in the house and getting to work. The lifestyle has changed, but that is not only for seniors, our level, but the rest of the population has gone through, and the demographics have gone through a working environment change.
Yeah.
So that when you're looking at buying your home, making your investment, selling, that extra room may be just the extra room for a home office and tax deduction. And you're looking at that unit under Florida law using the homestead exemption to protect that property long into the future and getting another tax deduction.
Yeah, it's so well said. You know, as you were saying and explaining through that, I was thinking to myself, like, this is why you want the expertise of somebody who understands the market, because they can take into account the things that are important for where you see yourself going. Like, we talk about this a lot, Mark, when we talk about the aging plan. We say you need a plan. A lot of people say, well, I want to age in place. I'm comfortable where I live. I'm good here. So then our question is, but what can we do to make sure that you're safe there long term? What are the things we need to do? Then there's a lot of people who say, like, I want to look ahead. Maybe, I raised my kids here. We can downsize now. I don't need that extra space like you were talking about. So again, having that strategy thought about ahead of time, this is an area that you can really help people maneuver.
Again, your agent bringing the standardized contract to you is going to be able to walk you through each clause of the contract. The agent's not going to give you legal advice,
Right.
but may recommend that you have an attorney to give you legal advice that you're going to rely on. But that advice is going to be dependent upon your individual circumstances.
Right.
And very often the condominium is going to be your choice. The single family home is going to be your choice. Even raw land is going to be your choice because you're going to hold it, because we're currently in an environment where they're not making more land.
Right.
So the value of the land is increasing because of the demand, and there's a limited supply
Yes.
in a peninsula like this of how much land is going to be available.
Yeah. We were just talking, I think, fairly recently about the population of Florida just exploding, and so many people moving here. It seems hard to imagine that it would be a tough thing to not do well with real estate here. In fact, we were talking about the fact that I heard somebody, much smarter person than me, was talking about, like, if you look at the stock market over time and you have a time horizon, it always goes up. Doesn't mean that it doesn't have a problem and it goes down here, takes a dip or whatever. But they say if you could, like, spread it out and look, like, over 30, 40 years, you will see it always marches upward. But the same is true, I think, with the real estate market, right? Because even though there's some cyclic, interest rates go up, interest rates go down, over time, it just seems like everything becomes more valuable.
Kerry, you bring us back to the macro, micro economic view of what you're trying to do when you're buying your real estate or investing in your real estate, because you may compare it to or judge it based on interest rates. Interest rates are going to be going up and down regardless, and this transaction is not going to make the difference. The real estate market is one of the key drivers of the gross domestic product in the United States. So that number, when it goes into the GDP of the United States, there's another indicator. Again, a macro indicator of what's happening in all of the real estate market, from the state of Washington to Key West in Florida, from New York to Southern California. The transactions that are taking place are based ultimately on local decisions. But looking at the real estate market and interest rates, you also got to look at what you're describing, value going up over time, so that arching measure is going to continue to go up regardless of what the relative interest rates or even activity is showing. So that if you bought the property today, you think the interest rate is high, by the time you get to closing, because of the demand in particular in the state of Florida, you're going to have more equity than when you first signed the contract at the time that you close on the contract. The property is going to go up in value.
We've talked about that fact because, sometimes people rent because there's other considerations. It may be just the finances. It may be the fact that they're not sure what, 5 years from now, if they're going to be in the same location. But for the most part, the argument that seems to hold and make some sense is the fact that when you are actually purchasing a property, as you make those mortgage payments or however you finance that property, each time you make that payment, you brought down what you owe, but at the same time, you've increased your equity. But then at the same time that's going on, typically your property is increasing in value. So you're actually getting like a double benefit when you are invested into the real estate. Am I saying that the right way?
When you're invested into the real estate, yes, you're increasing your equity, but you're increasing your net worth, so that your real estate asset is one aspect of your net worth. It may be the largest, and it's likely the largest, but you're increasing your net worth. Your wealth is built into that real estate investment. And if you look at what real estate investors are doing, they're buying and leasing it out.
Yeah.
And there's always a way to make a deal. One of the things I do in my own practice as I meet people is I shake hands and I say, I'm a deal maker, not a deal breaker.
Wow.
And I invite people, let me do the work for you. Let me negotiate. Allow me to educate. And I've taught courses in real estate. I've taught courses in business. I've given speeches on these particular topics to educate populations, to educate up-and-coming real estate agents. I've given programs for foreign investors, how to invest in the United States, how to structure your ownership, how to structure your purchase, and get to the goal that's going to give you the greatest increase and long-term value of your wealth.
This is so important. We're talking with Mark Gallegos with Real Broker LLC, but this is back to my point. When you think about these things, especially in your senior years, don't try this on your own. Call somebody who really has a real expertise. And like we're talking about, Mark, you have expertise in helping people if they're looking to acquire property, if they're looking to sell a property. That same knowledge of the market is going to help make sure that the best outcome that's possible can occur. But even if somebody's saying, I want to look at Florida as a growing market and real estate opportunities, even from an investment standpoint, that's your background. That's how you're able to help people. If people want to get in touch with you, what's a good way for them to give you a call?
Great. My phone number, remember, I'm a deal maker, not a deal breaker. Phone number is 305-761-8500. As I mentioned, I moved here from Miami, and so I have a 305 phone number, 305-761-8500. My email address, value, REMSG. That's value, then RE for real estate, MSG for my initials. Value, REMSG @gmail.com. Let me guide you through these transactions to increase your wealth as a seller, as a purchaser, as an investor.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us for the Helping Seniors TV today. I really want to kind of just take the final moment or so to just remind folks that we talked about that you have to find local expertise. So you can always look for a quote computer algorithm. You can always try to do a search online. You can always pluck that card off a bulletin board at a grocery store kind of thing. But what you really want to do is sit down with somebody who is dead serious about the business, who understands it, who has the experience to lead and guide you through. Because, Mark, like you said, for many people, this is once, twice, maybe a handful of times in their lifetime of experience. And getting the right help to make the right deal is going to yield so many positive benefits rather than just trying to do this on your own.
Absolutely. And in these days, people go to AI and it is artificial.
Yeah.
It is not a human being who's been on the ground with you, looking at your particular situation, speaking with you about your life, your goals, your investment, your reason for buying or selling. The transaction is true to you. It's not artificial intelligence.
Well said. Mark Gallegos with Real Broker, LLC. And thank you for joining us today. Thank you, viewer, for joining us today for this edition of Helping Seniors Television. On behalf of our president and founder, Joe Steckler, our whole team, we look forward to seeing you on the next edition of Helping Seniors TV.
I'm Joe Steckler. Thank you for joining our program today. I'd like to remind you that our senior information line is available to you at 321-473-7770. There you can get help and direction that could be helpful for your specific situation or circumstances. The work of helping seniors is very important, but we can't do it alone. That is why our sponsors here in Brevard County are so important. I'd like to thank our many area sponsors, businesses, and medical providers who support the mission of helping seniors that help us carry the cost of our media efforts. If you'd like to join us either as a business partner or simply donate as an individual, we welcome your call at 321-473-7770. You are always welcome to visit our website at www.helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Thanks so much for your help. It does make a difference.